employer and a superior, but he was also a guru in many ways. Dr. Ganguly was born in the year 1935. Actually, I should have said Padma Vibhushan, Dr. Ganguly. He got his PhD from the University of Illinois. And he has worked for about 35 years with Hindustan Unilever. And for 10 of them, between 1980 and 1990, he was the chairman of the company. And after that, for 7 years, he was on the board of Unilever. Dr. Ganguly has been also a non-executive chairman of ICI, First Solutions, Anand Bazar Patrika, and he was an independent director of ICICI Bank, Mahindra & Mahindra, and Dr. Reddy's Laboratory. And he was also an external director of RBI for some time. He has been very widely recognized. He is Padma Vibhushan, and he has been on the Prime Minister's Technology Advisory Committee for several times. And we are most happy to have him here today so that you all get to know him somewhat. Do feel free to ask him questions on the book that he has written. The book has a very intriguing title, Aftermath, Time, Home and Away. Now, what exactly does he mean? You should ask him. We should get to know from him. Thank you, Vijay.
Thank you so much, sir. Can I request you to, who's operating the slide, can you remove the slide, please, so that, yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Balraman. Now it's my proud privilege, as I mentioned to you, Mr. Gopalakrishnan is again not new to MMA. He'll be leading the conversation, fireside chat with the author, Dr. Ashok S. Before I request Mr. Gopal, let me briefly introduce Mr. Gopalakrishnan, former executive R. Gopalakrishnan, popularly known as RG, former executive director of Tata Sons Ltd. He's an author, speaker, and a corporate leader. His career spanned over 50 years and 31 in Unilever, and then he rose to be a vice chairman of Hindustan Unilever. Later, 19 years in Tata Sons as a director. He now serves as a non-executive chairman of Castrol India, an independent director of HEMAS, and also a Sri Lanka executive in resident of SP Jain Institute of Management and Research, Mumbai, and distinguished professor of IIT Kharagpur. He has authored 9 books so far, and very notably, A Comma in a Sentence, 6 Lenses, and Doodles on Leadership. And MMA was privileged to launch all the 9 books. I had the privilege of listening to him, all the 9 books, and I also got some of the books autographed by him, and it's a proud position in our library. Thank you, Mr. Gopalakrishnan, Mr. Balram, for facilitating Dr. Ashok Ganguly to come and speak on MMA platform. We are indeed privileged. Now I request Mr. Gopalakrishnan to take it forward. Mr. Gopalakrishnan.
Vijay, thank you. And first of all, thank you to MMA, who have been such gracious hosts for my books in the past. And by the way, Vijay, it was 9 when before COVID. During COVID, 8 more books came out. So I could not launch them in MMA virtually or any other way. But your graciousness, both as an individual and as a membership of MMA, has always been one of my very fond memories. But today is a very special evening, and I wish it could have been personal in your lovely auditorium. But I want to say why it is special. It is special because Ashok Ganguly has been, initially he was a senior officer in the company. Then he became my boss. Then he became my mentor. And latterly, the last 15 years, 10 years, he is my friend. And there are only 2 people with whom I have a relationship. It started with senior officer, turning to boss, then become mentor, and then a friend. And so it is a very great pleasure for me that Dr. Ganguly has written this book. And it's a fascinating book. It's always good for book lovers to have more books than they can read in their house. You know, it's like Balram knows, with grocery products, manufacturers stock up retail trade with more product that they can sell so that they will always have stock available. But Dr. Ganguly's book is not only worth buying, but is also worth reading for 2 or 3 very exemplary aspects of it which have struck me. I mean, there are many exemplary aspects. So I would like to start this fireside chat by asking Dr. Ganguly to comment on an observation that I have made, and he is aware that I made this observation. I had long ago learned the principle of obliquity, that in life, things come to you when you don't aim for it. Like a billiards player or a billiards table, he aims off the wall, into the ball and into the pot. And, the happiest people are not chasing happiness. The most profitable companies are not chasing profit. The most successful tennis players are not chasing victory. They want to win, of course, but their focus is not on playing well and enjoying themselves. Dr. Ganguly's book suggests that he is a walking exemplar of obliquity, because he never thought he was going to go to the US. He got a PhD. He came back because he wanted to look after his parents in Bombay. He's Mumbai born, by the way, for those who don't know. He never intended, when he's coming back, to join a multinational company. We are talking of the late 50s, early 60s, because multinationals were not quite a good name in those days. He, I'm sure, had aspirations, but it was not his focus that he should become chairman, and he became chairman. And he was invited to join the cabinet by Rajiv Gandhi, formally or informally, and he said, I'm no good at politics, so he gave that up. And in this way, his whole life has been one, and he never intended to write this book, but he's written the book. So the first question I would like to ask Ashok Ganguly is, while you may not have thought of the word obliquity, is it a correct assessment that your life is a series of apparent accidents or coincidences? When we read the book, we get that impression.
Well, thank you very much, Gopal. Captain Vijay Kumar Balraman. It's a privilege for me to be speaking to the members of Madras Management Association. And in the first instance, if you talk about ubiquity, I did not intend to write a book. The book is made up of things I wrote, which ended up as a book, principally because of the encouragement and persistence of Mr. Gopalakrishnan. So it is quite a coincidence for both of us to be on the receiving end this evening. But life is full of ubiquities. I have to practice the pronouncement of that word. I didn't know about the word until I read your column. The point is, and I think it's very difficult to communicate, that if you're anxious about things in life, there is a statistical probability of those things not happening exactly as you wanted them to happen, or at all. Therefore, I would say that it fits properly because, it's when you reach my age, the late 80s, that you look back on life and say, is it what I wanted to do? You really don't answer that question because there is no answer to that question. But you are happy, pleased with the way it all went. I was not a very popular public speaker to young managers, IIMs and all, although I presided over, I don't know, Balaraman, whether you were there at that time.
Yes.
When the convocation, I addressed the convocation in Ahmedabad. Yes. But I was seen as an odd person because I did not have a formula and a pathway and a map to succeed in life. I try to tell people that, you don't plan your success, somebody else does. What you do is develop the people and their talents who are your colleagues and who are working with you. That is what you devote yourselves to their future rather than be preoccupied with your own future. So Gopal, ubiquity is an appropriate term which I would have never found out if I had not read your article in the Times of India. Thank you very much.
The word is obliquity, not ubiquity. Obliquity means coming at it from an angle, tangentially.
Sorry,
But-
tell me the pronunciation.
Obliquity, O-B-L-I, obliquity.
Sorry, thank you. I'll remember that.
I think the reason I asked you this question is not to introduce. I find that we have already 83 people on the Zoom and probably several hundred on the other channels. Is that right, Vijay?
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Right. So there are a lot of young people here, and MMA particularly gets audience of youngsters who are studying MBAs or young managers. And I thought this is the point worth their noting. They may not believe it, but our own scriptures say that you do your duty and let the results come. But you may not even want to listen to that. But here's a live example of somebody who says, just get on with what you have to do, develop other people, and somebody will take care of it. You think of that somebody as good boss or God is left to you. I think Dr. Ganguly has written this book after 25 years of retiring, or more than 20, about 25 years of retiring. Yeah. So obviously the Ganguly, the author, is different from Ganguly, the director and the chairman. And many people think of Ganguly, the chairman, as a toughie who was driving for goals, fair to everybody, by the way, but very demanding. And after 25, 30 years, he seems like a mellow, warm human being, which he is, I can assure you, since I know him. Dr. Ganguly, is it true that you have changed? Because many people are ex-Lever people who have an image of you which is dated, in my opinion, dated.
You see, being in the public domain, are we always what we are? I had a job to do, and I had very brilliant and outstanding predecessors like Prakash Tandon, Vasant Rajadaksha, T. Thomas. I did not want to copy any of them, but one of the common characteristics in all my predecessors was be what you are. You see what they were. And that is exactly what I did. That if I appeared to be a toughy, stern person, that is what my job demanded of me. I did not play act my role. It was the pressures, concern, the challenges, and of course the joys and successes as well, which transforms you in your role, because you're playing. That's a role you have got as the head of a company, and if that is the way you're perceived, and I was aware slightly that I was perceived like that, I did not go out of my way to invite people to see the inner Ganguly. I was quite happy to be taken as I was.
Thank you. Since we are talking about Hindustan Lever, many people have asked me this question, and so I'd like to pose it to you. How does Hindustan Lever manage to produce such an inventory of good people, managers, who then go to other companies and lead them very successfully? What is the secret sauce? How would you explain it to the audience?
Well, I use a term which might sound a little bit, I don't know how it will sound, but I have one term why Hindustan Lever is Hindustan Unilever. It is the uncompromising. What I saw all through my lifetime and was not aware of it consciously is the uncompromising commitment to meritocracy. Nothing else counted.
That's true.
Nothing else counted. The other day I saw that people are now saying that the top people who have an asterisk in their name in the personnel department. It should not be there because young people are changing. And I think it's all perfectly normal. But I don't think that Hindustan Unilever will ever give up the uncompromising commitment to meritocracy. That's my belief that when I look back on life, and I don't think there was anything exceptional in me. But I'm also, modest enough that there must have been a pool of people from whom they selected. But if somebody else did it, you don't market your own merits.
So to use your own expression, which I've heard many years ago, are you saying really the Hindustan Unilever people are not individually extraordinary? They're ordinary people, but together they act extraordinary results. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely. That's a great summary. That's a great summary. If any individual ever felt indispensable, I would feel very sad for the person.
Well, that brings me to page 61 of your book, in which you have discussed about your working with Bob Whitney. I think he was your boss or mentor in your PhD days in America. And I'm reading from your book. One must honestly admit, all humans who felt indispensable rest peacefully in the backyard of churches. And right now, we are witnessing what's happening in Disney. We are seeing what's happening in Starbucks, where a former CEO retires but becomes something else, chairman, non-executive chairman, and then ousts back the new incumbent. Hindustan Unilever has never done this. Prakash Tandon went away, Raja Diksha went away, Thomas went away, you went away, and so on and so forth. What causes this feeling in business leaders of indispensability? Is it self-obsession or something else?
No, I think there is I don't know the answer to that, but I can guess there is a combination between immortality and indispensability. You can start believing in the songs of your colleagues. And they said, how can you retire? What will we do without you?
Right.
And then I would guide them immediately to the backyard of the church. I said, what are we doing without these gentlemen or ladies who are resting in peace here? And family business, it is different, Gopal.
Yeah.
In family business, I think there is and everybody who thinks that he or she is indispensable has a deep insecurity within themselves.
Yeah, whether it's a professional company or a family managed business, correct?
More in family company, but no less in professional companies, so-called professional companies.
Right. I think this is something MMA can consider. You may use Dr. Ganguly's book if you need to, because it's in the public domain. But we are in a lot of management and leadership development. And the mortality and the invincibility of leaders, which many people assume is true of them. And these are not people who are leading the largest companies. So I'll leave that thought with you, Vijay, to bring into the pedagogy that we all are paid to do a job. You do the job for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and then you move on. But I want to ask Dr. Ganguly a question. I met a naval officer once, and he described to me the wake of a ship. So I said, what's the wake of a ship? He said, if you really want to understand whether the ship has had good stability in plowing through the waters, you don't look at the front of the ship. You don't look at the mast of the ship. You look at how it leaves the ripples on the water after the ship has gone. And if it is symmetric, harmonic ripples, we call it wake in naval terminology, then it's a good ship. And then he went on to add, you must also be aware in the world of management, it is not what returns a particular CEO achieved, but what people say about him after he's gone. when there's no need to flatter him or say nice things. And one of the great things about Hindustan Unilever, I'm taking chairman as a moniker, but it's true for many other managers as well, leaders, is they leave a good wake. People still speak fondly about him. Is there something about the culture of Hindustan Unilever that allows people to leave a wake, or the guys without a good wake don't rise up in the company? What is your view?
Well, I think even captaining a ship, one can make mistakes. And therefore, if I say that none of my predecessors or all of my successors have not had problems and failures, including me, but then it would give a wrong impression that if you just keep at the waves that you leave behind are in perfect order and harmony. So I think one has to modestly accept that there is no such thing as a perfect leader, and there is no such thing as an immaculate succession planning. I know my mistakes. I live with those mistakes. I did not want to start a public debate by dwelling upon them in the book, because it does not help. All I'm saying as a human being, you, I, Balaraman, and everybody else, if we say that we did not make mistakes, either in choice of people or choice of strategy, I think it would give a wrong impression.
Okay, thanks. That's a clear answer. There is one matter which you brought to a conclusion, started by your predecessor. And even people like me, who were young managers in those days, used to wonder, why are we fighting so much? Which is the matter of Unilever holding 51% shareholding in Hindustan Unilever. We are probably the only one company which fought for it on principles and spent 13 or 14 years, if my memory serves me right, arguing the case. Now that 25, it's more than that, it's almost 40 years ago. 82.
So that's more than, no, it came through in 1981.
Yeah,
so
it's almost 40 years, yes. Now that 40 years are over and you're in the afterness mindset, what would you share with our audience about the value and the worthwhileness of that battle?
You see, what I remember from my experience is that multinational companies after independence were seen as the dregs of colonialism. And therefore, all these laws came into existence. And I'm not sure whether there was not overt or covert cooperation from some of the major business houses of this country with the government in order to curb the successful companies. And foreign exchange, FERA, I think it was a draconian law, like MRTP, DGTG, etc., etc. But maybe the economic leaders at that time thought it was proper. When I look back, I think it was an issue of tremendous foresight why Hindustan Unilever fought for its legitimate rights. Hindustan Unilever had fulfilled all the conditions to meet the laws of Foreign Exchange Regulation Act. And Hindustan Unilever was denied majority Unilever shareholding. You can ask why majority shareholding. Because India was a valuable subsidiary, although it did not produce much of dividends or profits because of price control and other reasons. But the major fight was that your legitimate legal rights were being denied to you for political whimsicalness. And that was the battle. The major part was fought by my predecessor. I ran the last mile, basically. And I think in retrospect, that was the wisest thing that was done. And I don't think that Hindustan Unilever would have survived as a minority subsidiary, or it may have. We will never find out. But we were fighting on principle, as we have fought everything with the government.
And it is also very interesting to observe factually. At the time you joined the company and I joined a few years later, Hindustan Unilever accounted for probably under 1% of Unilever's profits and under 2% of its turnover, and it was not profitable from a Unilever point of view. And now, 55 years later, it accounts for, I'm told, 15% of the revenue and 50-60% of the market cap. You are a part of the journey, and when you are undertaking a journey, you can't see the change happening. But when you reflect back, again, I'm using the afterness principle, what sort of satisfaction and observation can you make?
You say, I don't derive, I'm very happy. Let me put it this way. When I look at Hindustan Unilever, what is written about it, his performance, etc. But I don't derive any joy by saying that how wonderful what we did at one time, it has turned out to be. That would be naive. But it's I'm delighted that not only 51% majority shareholding, but close to almost 70-odd% of the Hindustan Unilever shareholding is, and the percentage of profit contribution, the revenue contribution to the worldwide Unilever performance, it is a significant square, which we were not in those days. And what Ernest Woodruff, one of the Unilever chairman, had said when somebody asked, hey, why are you suffering this India pain, with all the political shenanigans and everything else? He said that India is a country with the largest proportion of human talent compared to any market that Unilever is in. And I wish I would have written that in my afterness thought, but how many things can you put in? So you derive, like you see your grandchildren doing well. People like, I'm still alive. My 3 predecessors are no longer there. So one which is a bit frightening that way. But I'm delighted, happy as a shareholder, rather than trying to say that I'm very happy as a former chairman. It would be unfair because, what is my happiness to do with this huge performance?
Thank you. I think that's a great tribute to the succeeding generations who have come after your own chairmanship. I want to move from subject of Unilever and Hindustan Unilever to politics. You were a member of Rajiv Gandhi Scientific Advisory Council, and you were, along with C.N.R. Rao, one of Bharat Ratna, Ramesh Pashelkar, also Padma Vibhushan, and yourself, though not perhaps at the time you served on that committee, under the chairmanship of Rajiv Gandhi. And I would like you to, I'm requesting you to reflect on how a total non-scientist with no pretensions of being a scientist could chair such 3 or 4 tigers of scientists. And what can we learn from the behavior of Rajiv Gandhi in that forum of SAC PM?
The time the SAC PM function, Rajiv Gandhi had come with one of the largest majorities in the of members of parliament in the history of India. And so he could have been a pompous leader. First of all, he was a very reluctant leader, and only because his brother had died in a plane crash and his mother insisted that he come into politics just to help her. He became prime minister. The greatest quality he had, number 1, he never pretended what he was not. Number 2, he had the great patience and commitment to listen and hear. Not only our committee, but I used to be part of industrial delegations that you would invite in the evening to spend time with us informally. Number 3, he had developed a vision what we should be and how we should be that. Although he was let down quite badly by the officials at that time, many of them. So the ability to not only hear, but to listen, not only hear, but to listen was one of the greatest qualities of leaders. He had that. And his choice of outside people to listen to was also very interesting. So these were the qualities which normally leaders get so pompous and swollen-headed that they miss, many of them miss. Narasimha Rao was also very much like that. Indiraji was like that. I was on the CSIR Apex committee with her and Ramalinga Swami and Vasant Sathe, Narendra Tiwari. So that was the council of CSIR. Her ability to listen was also outstanding. She had other issues and all which I'm not qualified to comment on. You asked on Rajiv, they have gone on for a little while. Ability to listen, hear, and to say, I don't know. And he would raise his hand and he said, I don't understand this. Please explain it to me.
So the reason I asked this question was apart from my own curiosity. Reading your book, I got the feeling that without pontificating or summarizing lessons, they are very subtly weaved into the copy of the book. And I encourage readers to look for the lessons because they are in the middle of very interesting narratives, and you may see the narratives which are the surface of the solution, but a little below that you will find very, very deep lessons. The quality of a leader that Rajiv Gandhi demonstrated as a chairman of the Scientific Advisory Committee. I noticed that there are 21 questions in the chat box, so I will just conclude this fireside chat with two quick questions. The first one I want to ask is, you're a scientist, turned industrial manager, turned research director of Unilever, turned SAC PM. Why does India Inc. not invest in science?
That's a super question. How should I do? Why does India not invest in human resources? Why doesn't India? Why don't we produce? I'm reading a book about biology, global medicines, and all that, and you come across Indians, but Indians who have traveled and lived outside most of their lives, rather than Indians who have been nurtured and grown up there. Why do we have to explode our minds by going outside India? Why can't we do it here? And I think a very sort of trend I'm watching, which worries me very much, that this is not changing. I worry about why we are not hearing more about the Narlikars and the Siana Raos of this world, who came into global fame for their work rather than anything else. It's bothersome, and therefore I think we should be concerned about it.
Okay, I'm going to ask a last question before handing it back to Vijay to conduct the questions from the chat box. I can carry on for a very long time, but that is not the purpose of the, which is on a very personal note. You have credited in the book your very gracious wife, Connie, whom I had the privilege also of knowing very well, and the role she played in whatever might be attributed to your success, and the two lovely daughters that you have. Would you say a little bit about the role of the family in the development and the maturation of a corporate career? Whether you're chairman or general manager of the company, doesn't matter. But I just thought a word on that would be interesting to our audience.
It's particularly in India, if anybody asks me that question, what I say is very simple. My marriage was an arranged marriage in the Indian sense. And it turned out to be a life of love and affection which carries 80% credit for whatever I sort of pontificate in public and whatever I have achieved. Therefore, the importance of the family in making you what you ultimately become and what you ultimately achieve has not been discussed in the public domain as much as it should be. It's enormous. It is without that. Number two, a lot of homes, the pressure is on children to achieve even more than the parents. And I want to just finish up with this last incident. I was a complete failure in school. And my father was a man of gravitas, had great capability. Not for one moment, since in all my years in school, did he ever express or directly or even remotely any disappointment. So life started with happy-go-lucky childhood of indifference into a family life of great love and affection. So there was a comfort factor which was responsible for what I became. And I would give it almost a 75 to 80% of whatever happened in the public domain is because the type of home that my wife had built without making any waves.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think there are so many subtle and not so subtle lessons that one can drive. It all depends on the viewer's eye. But I encourage the readers to draw these lessons. And I hope you got a flavor of what these 260 pages of the book have. They are not a rah-rah-rah of this is what I did in my life, but what I learned out of him. He's almost like a fly sitting on the wall, watching the passenger Ashok Ganguly taking a train journey. And he's as though he's written it as though he's watching from outside and not about I. So with that, I'll ask Vijay to conduct the Q&A session for Dr. Ganguly, and I'll stand by.
Thank you, Mr. Gopal. Fascinating, great insights, and over 800 people are watching program on our various social media portals. And before I take on the questions, what has come online, is Mr. Balraman, do you have any question for your former colleague from HUL?
No, I don't.
No questions. But you know HUL and him more. I thought it would be quite interesting to ask some questions which you could do that. Anyway, sir, fine.
No, you see, the great thing about Dr. Ganguly is you get what you see. When I joined, when Pons became part of the Unilever group, we had a meeting in 4 acres in Bombay, which is the place where meetings are held, group meetings are held. And so Dr. Ganguly came there and delivered a very tough speech. So during tea break, we were talking about, the chairman seems very tough. Then one of the Hindustan Unilever people told me, his bark is worse than his bite. Now, what does that mean? That means at heart, he's a very human being. I mean, he's genuinely kind. He is playing the role of a chairman. Do you understand? So that's what Dr. Ganguly is. He's very human, very kind-hearted, and very genuine. And he values truth, honesty, and merit. And that was our great luck.
Thank you, sir. Leadership traits which I hope all the viewers watching this program follow. So here's a question from Mr. Mittal from Chennai. What it says, in hindsight, do you regret not joining the cabinet of Rajiv Gandhi when he requested you? Maybe you could have become a PM, sir, because knowing what had happened later. And also, you also want to know how was it to work in a government after successful stint in a corporate world?
Well, I never worked for government. I never worked for government, but I think I knew my strengths and weaknesses. I would have been a complete failure in politics. It was very difficult to convince Mr. Gandhi. And he never insisted, but he was very keen. I said, I know my strengths and weaknesses. So this goes for everyone. You have to be honest with your own assessment of your strengths and weaknesses. And I would have been a complete failure. So I did not do any sacrifice or any other thing. It was my self-assessment, which I'm very happy about.
Great, sir.
What was the other part of the question?
Other part of questions, the difference between, but you said you're not working, even as a consultant, even as an advisor, how was it working a difference between what you have done in a corporate world where people listen to you and execute, unlike you are a consultant, you are an advisor, yes, sometimes it's taken, sometimes it's not taken, the right spirit. How did you manage to really convey your points of view very, very successfully to make sure it's well understood and implemented?
At the political level, the sheer logic was accepted. But at various bureaucratic levels, they felt, I don't know what they felt, but they must have felt that this is fly-by-night chaps who come here and try to give advice. We have to deliver the goods. And I had some very good friends, politicians. And one of them asked me one day, he was sitting and I was having lunch in his office with him. I was actually eating his lunch. So he says, Ashok, when will you stop selling soap? And I told him, I said, sir, the day you stop taking a bath, I will stop selling soap. So, and you have to be very clear. And mind you, I have a great respect for civil servants because they are totally committed to the government which comes to power. But one of them had also told me, as long as it serves, as Sotohosi, as long as it serves the nation well. He said this as an very soft voice, which is normal, good, intelligent people.
Yes. So here's a question from Mr. Mukundan from Pondicherry. Sir. He said, sir, many corporate leaders advise the young leaders to make a strategy for their life and plan for the career very, very carefully. And whereas you mentioned, I think you never planned anything and you took on whatever came on your way. Now, what you advise to the people who are so serious about taking life, so serious, taking a strategy for their life and the corporate growth?
Well, I tell you what, I mean, for different reasons, corporate groups have been in pressure historically. And therefore, you have to manage the pressure. That's why you are there. But planning for life, I think all your audience will excuse me, you will excuse me, is an oxymoron. You know? And I'm more than convinced at my old age, when I look back to the life, that you can plan as much as you want, but there are human forces around you and other powers in the environment whom you don't know what their thoughts are, what their strategies are. You can plan in isolation, but you cannot live happily ever after.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Ashok, maybe with your permission, may I also direct some questions to Mr. Gopalakrishnan. We want to make best use of his presence too, because he teaches in management institutions, and this is a subject which is really bothering the young people, that make strategy for your life. Make strategy, you will all the time making strategy in the corporate world for success. What's your word of advice, Mr. Gopalakrishnan?
Well, it's not very different from what Ashok Ganguly has just mentioned. I can't say I'm an exemplar, but it happens that during the first 15 years of your career, say from the age of 22 to 35 or something like that, you are setting targets for, just like you do for production or sales or costs or whatever. But in those 10, 15 years, you realize that management career, in fact, life itself, but the management career is not like a law of physics. This is the cause, that is the effect. It follows the lawlessness of biology, if I may venture to put it that way, in the presence of a distinguished biologist like Dr. Ganguly. And the lawlessness of biology is that biology evolves. In physics, you never say evolve. You say that's the cause, that's the effect, I've proven it. In biology, you say, well, a number of factors came together and something happened. And I think, talking for myself, by the time I was in my late 30s, early 40s, I had realized that there are biological laws at work, and sitting and doing physics planning is a bit of a waste of time. But I've already done it for 10, 12 years. But that happens to you because of youth, But I think there's a transition that happens, which I like to describe as a transition from physics to biology, which I would comment young people to think about.
Lovely, lovely, sir. Here is a question from Mr. Anthony from Bangalore, sir. He says, sir, we live in unusual times today when it comes to working environment. A co-founder can remove the CEO. A CEO can even be remove the founders. What's your word of advice to the corporate leaders in this complex world, how to manage a situation, keeping in mind what's happening around?
Well, I think, to get talent, be patient with talent and grow with talent. The business owners have the privilege of hiring and firing. Professional companies develop people. And business owners want something more. There's impatience. I mean, they are the majority shareholders. And if the shareholders are not happy, they have a right to hire and fire. And depending on what line you choose, you are a part of that culture. And therefore, having worked for a professional company all my life, I do not know how life in an owner company is for a CEO or a managing director or whatever. So it's difficult for me to comment on that.
Thank you, Dr. Ashok S. We have Mr. Balraman, who has worked extensively in being independent director of many companies and also some of the family-owned businesses. Maybe you would like to share your thoughts on how this change environment going to really impact the corporate world. And after Mr. Balraman, I also Mr. Gopalakrishnan to share your thoughts, because this is one thing which is really, really worrisome for many corporates, en masse firing the people, and it's really disturbing. Maybe Mr. Balraman?
Well, if you are referring to what this billionaire is zillionaire is doing,
Yes, yes.
I think he's destroying value. Globally speaking, he's destroying value. Because he cannot appreciate value. See, if you cannot appreciate value, you destroy value. And I think he's got so much money, he can afford to do all that. And that is, you see, the great thing about Dr. Ganguly, if I may say so, I have nothing more to get from him other than his grace, which I value and I hope I will receive. You see, he's a great human being. What I have learned after many years in life and business life is, one has to be human. Everything comes from the human being. To me, when you look at a person, you estimate that person based on what he or she has done in the past, which is totally wrong to me, because the potential in that person is unknown. There is a giant inside a human being. There is a giant inside every human being. What brings the giant out is great leadership, someone whom he values, to expect the world out of him. I have known very good leaders who, by sheer expectation, have brought out the very best in people. If someone knows that he or she is trusted, and that he or she is backed, the very best in that person comes out. So this is leadership. I would say that ultimately one has to be human. to succeed in life, to achieve the best in life, to bring out the best in everybody, it is very important to be human. It's very important to understand that problems and failures need not repeat themselves. I mean, the only thing you can do with a failure is to forget it immediately and look at the next opportunity. And you can only win based on strengths and opportunities.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Maybe Mr. Gopal would like to share your thoughts on this before I move to the next question.
No, go to the next question.
Yes.
This is Dr. Ganguly show. We
Yes.
should not.
Sir, here Mr. Viru Nagar is from Chennai. This is addressed to Mr. Ganguly only. He said, sir, the actual executives are now leading many corporates around the world. I think they become factories of CEOs for worldwide. Is it a loss or gain to HUL in your perspective, sir? You train them so good and they leave and join many great organizations. What is your view on this?
Well, I'm the least qualified to comment on this because I worked with the same organization for 35 years. But I've been a non-executive member, non-executive chairman in a number of companies. And most companies get people on the board, especially nowadays, excellent people on the board. But the whole idea of governance and financial probity, we have to still mature into professionalism, and we have still some ways to go. And it will happen. It will happen. There was nothing before the non-executive directors were chosen, and but for that to achieve a critical mass, I think we have some ways to go. I'm also a shareholder of many companies. I keep a watch. Not many companies, some companies, and I respect most everybody for the private sector, public sector. There's a commitment, but commitment and idealness leaves a little gap.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Mr. Gupta. Gupta is again from Chennai. Sir, he says, sir, the present trend you must have seen in many corporate worlds, there is a question of mass resignation and people leave the job, and also the moonlighting, and so much of complexing happening, work from home, work from office. Now, if you are in the present day a chairman of an organization like HUL, what would be your advice to the people who you believe in this moonlighting, where people add money to that free time? Or do you agree this is not fair? What's your view on these things happening in today's corporate worlds?
I'm very sort of old-fashioned. You cannot have moonlighting. You don't do moonlighting with your family. Why should you moonlight with the company? And I'm very old-fashioned. That's why I always say that. I find it, we were forced to work from home during the epidemic. And I think it acquired a certain competence and excellence. But the times have come back to normal. If you are working for a company, if that is the covenant you have entered with an organization, I think moonlighting is dishonest. Letting down a company is like letting down your family. Sorry, I feel very strongly about it.
Again, next question is from Mr. Kumar. Mr. Kumar is again from Chennai. So what do you want to is, sir, one common problem that is happening today is somewhere along the way that we lost track of what the actual consumer want. Focus more on bottom line, and you really ignore what the consumer needs. Do you think the bottom line is more important than the consumer needs today?
See, if you're not fulfilling consumer needs, you can forget about the bottom line.
True.
That's my view.
True.
So a simple answer.
Absolutely.
Gopal
Maybe
might want to add.
Gopal
No,
would like to add.
I think it's a perfectly straight answer. You must know who pays your salary. It's not your boss. It's the consumer.
Well said, Gopal. Well said.
Truth. So here is another question from Mr. Shekhar. Mr. Shekhar is from Hyderabad. He says, sir, how do you drive innovation with a sense of ownership to encourage innovation mindset in the corporate world? Because that is one thing which is lacking in the large corporate world, because the most startups are coming. People who are not able to innovate in their own organization, they quit and start getting into startup mode, and very, very successful, some of them. So what is your word of advice to the corporate today to encourage innovation, make sure the startups thing happen in their own organizations?
Well, either innovation and change is in your gene or it is not. Because if you're not continuously changing and innovating, you're really cutting short your longevity. And even in trade, you need innovation. Even people who deal in commodities need innovation. I do not know of any activity which generate funds and surpluses who don't have to innovate in order to survive and thrive. It's simple as that. And companies do go on and, belly up and just sort of say that let's get more out of it. What you're doing is you're digging your grave.
Great, sir. Here is a question from Mr. Ravi from Chennai again. It says, what's your advice to corporate leaders, CEOs in managing their emotional quotient? So that is one thing which is really impacting large number, and their personal health. This is an area which is not really paid adequate attention by the leaders today. And how do you done this very, very successfully during your career, peak of your career, that work-life balance, paid attention to your health as well as your family, that work-life balance, how did you manage? And maybe a word of advice would really do good to large number of viewers watching this.
Yeah, I've already got a bad reputation, but what I'm going to respond to that question. Basically, I think it's a corporation's responsibility to provide you with health support, and that Hindustan Unilever did eminently well. And in our days, we had very modest salaries and all that. So the health support both to aging parents and to the manager and manager's family was a great sort of burden off your mind. But if you go in today's jargon about your progression curve, emotional balance, the emotional balance is mostly derived out of your family. And my 80% credit to my family was I didn't realize at that time that they were really providing me the emotional quotient, which made me behave as the person I did.
Before we let you go, and for the closing comments from Mr. Balram and Mr. Gopalakrishnan, one last question for the evening, sir. The question says, so as a successful corporate leader, what's your word of advice to large number of young leaders watching this program? What they should be really focusing today and be a successful leader?
Well, focus on your work, be outstanding, excel, but don't be over anxious drawing the graph of who is getting what increment at the end of the year. No, somebody else is taking care of you. But you bring out the best in you rather than worrying where I will be in 3 years' time, where I will be in 10 years' time. Plunge yourself in your work and give your best.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ashok S. And it's been a very blessed and fascinating evening with some very thought-provoking views and insights from you. And I really urge upon all the viewers watching the program. This is available by Penguin, published by Penguin, available on Amazon, AFTERNESS, Home and Away. I think it's a must read for each one of you. It should be in your library. It will be there in the MMA library. Please do come and read. It's also available on Amazon and various other things. And thank you so much, sir. Before I request come to the final thing, I request Mr. R Gopalakrishnan and Balraman for the final words before we close, and over to Mr. R Gopalakrishnan.
Well, I don't think I have anything new to add except to thank MMA, thank the author for being here, and thank Balu for chairing this session. It's always a pleasure to be with MMA, and I look forward to my next opportunity. But what I'm really impressed with MMA is you managed to get 800 people, and you're going to put this on YouTube after this, so that will be another 20,000 people will watch it on YouTube. Will you remember, if I may ask on a selfish basis, send the link on the YouTube recording to Dr. Ganguly?
Yes. It will reach with all the pictures.
You can do it directly, Gopal. You can go to YouTube.
All right.
Yes. It'll be uploaded
You don't
next
need
half an hour
MMA.
time.
See, you don't need MMA. If you go to YouTube and you keep watching day after day, you will see the number who has watched it increasing. And YouTube will hold it for quite some time, for about 3 months, 6 months, and so on. So this will be a record for people to see later.
That's nice. And MMA, I'll compliment you on the good work you're doing. A book like Dr. Ganguly, despite all your exhortations, will not be read by 20,000 people. But if 20,000 people can hear about it, and of them 7,000 buy it, it's some work done for the day. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Usually our large number of people watch. In fact, some of our events are watched by more than 1.5 lakh people, sir, on YouTube. So our YouTube channel is very popular. I'm quite sure many will watch and get inspired. Next time when you visit Chennai, you must visit MMA Management Center. We've got a state-of-art complex here. And since you are separated by distance, what we do is the people who could not visit MMA is we give a digital memento, which we would like to present you one, and it will be an honor for you to accept the thing. And what we do on behalf of you, Mr. Balram and Gopalakrishnan, we present mask. In addition to only a mask, which is really lost its significance, we also go and do a lot of social service around the area where we work, and we also do a lot of work with poor government schools on CSR initiative, teach children many things. All these we are able to do that because the great leaders like you come and speak in MMA, which inspires large number of people who watch this program in physically. And thanks so much, sir. It's indeed a great honor and pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Balraman, for facilitating Dr. Ashok Ganguly to come and speak on MMA platform. It's a great privilege and honor for us. And thanks to every one of you. Thank you all the viewers for your questions. So sorry, some of you called me that why my question is not asked, because we go by the time, and maybe next time we'll do that. And sorry, I'm not able to accommodate all the questions which has come online, and we picked up some of them which are relevant. Thanks so much to each one of you, and till we meet again.